Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Behind the Curtain of Healthcare. We were lucky enough to get a great first guest in Jarvis Gray, and we highly recommend his podcast, The Quality Cast. We cover all aspects of quality improvement and the need for physician leaders to begin taking charge and driving change inside their organizations. Jarvis also taught us about cave people, but you'll have to listen to find out why they're in every organization, no matter the industry. Thanks again for listening, and if you'd like to be a guest, please let us know. All information in the description below. Welcome to the first episode of Behind the Curtain of Healthcare. For our first guest, we have Jarvis Gray. I totally forgot to introduce Fred Newmark, but you probably remember him from the last video. Jarvis Gray is an accomplished healthcare quality improvement consultant and host of the Healthcare Quality Cast, an audio podcast spotlighting today's most exciting and inspiring quality professionals within the healthcare industry. Jarvis has an extensive background in supporting healthcare teams in all areas of operational excellence, project facilitation, and business intelligence utilization for performance improvement. He is an analytical and conceptual thinker who effectively partners with organizational leaders to assess opportunities, facilitate strategic decisions, and drive successful implementations. Throughout his podcast, Jarvis has recorded over 125 episodes with healthcare leaders spanning 4 different continents. His show is currently followed in 29 countries across the globe, with his quality people community growing larger every day. Jarvis earned his Bachelor of Science in Industrial Engineering, holds a Master of Healthcare Administration, as well as a Master of Project Management degree. Jarvis is a certified project management professional, certified Kaizen facilitator, and manager of quality and organizational excellence through the American Society of Quality. He is also a certified Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt and Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award examiner. Welcome, Jarvis. Thank you for being our first guest.
Thank you. That's what you get when you hire somebody on Fiverr to write a bio for you. So,
well, it's definitely extensive and quite a unique background. Quality improvement in healthcare. What does that really look like? How do you implement that? I just want to jump right into it because I've never really heard any of this stuff before.
No, absolutely. Well, in all fairness, if you've never heard of it, I'm really hoping that it will be the standard really on how healthcare is described forever moving forward. Quality improvement in healthcare, the work that I do is partnering with healthcare leaders from the C-suite all the way down to the patient care level, the front line, to implement very formal, very structured problem-solving methodologies. So you'll hear about things like Lean and Six Sigma, a lot of the different tools like Kaizen events and A3s. So that's quality improvement in a nutshell. The approaches are things that were very well structured and formalized around the early to mid 80s, and only really have started to take off in healthcare maybe over the last 10 to 15 or so years. That said, nowadays, I think the community of quality people, so folks like me and even other disciplines that are getting into quality improvement, is really starting to grow and expand. And we have a lot of really cool organizations that are also getting behind folks like me to really say, we need problem solvers in healthcare to help turn the curve on where we want to go.
I think you left out one key component, Jack, and that's this. You did not mention that Jarvis went to the U.
That's right.
So
that's right.
we cannot leave that out. I apologize, but that's important to me and to him.
I was born in Miami. I feel like I personally failed.
Well, so funny enough, so I went to the U. I had the opportunity to play football during my time there. And I'd say out of those guys that I played with, they were the monsters. They were the guys that really represented the U. And I was the guy on the team, getting beat up half the time. But now that I'm in my professional life, I can honestly say I think I bring that U swag to all the work that I do. So it's interesting how I've kind of embodied that now as an alumni. But yes, sir, it's all about the U.
You didn't just say you were the Rudy of the U, did you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. During my time there, somebody had to give those guys a good look. So I did my best.
Cool.
So I know that Lean and Six Sigma was originally for manufacturing, right? That's kind of how it came around. So from a being born in the manufacturing world, what does it look like when you bring it to the healthcare world? Like, how does it impact physicians or in a healthcare organization overall?
Yeah, so I'll start at least from a healthcare organization standpoint, and then we can touch physician focus specifically. But the same way it would impact a manufacturing plant, it does the same in healthcare, because a lot of those principles are built around, respect for people, understanding your processes, understanding your data, being aware of all of your safety hazards and improvement opportunities. That's what they fought during those years in manufacturing when they weren't as safe and they weren't as productive as those organizations may have wanted back then. That's the same thing we're fighting now in today's healthcare environment, because organizations are being stressed to do more with less. We hear that all the time. That's why healthcare reform is such an absolute major topic in the news, and it will likely stay that way for years to come. So those organizations are really trying to figure out how to be more productive, how to be safer, how to provide more care that provides better care experiences to the patients, to their customers. And all of those components are exactly what Lean and Six Sigma and a number of other improvement methodologies, that's the core principle of a lot of those. So conceptually, philosophically, it's there. The hardest point from the work that I do, kind of from that technical perspective. So I'm an engineer by background, working with physicians and nurses and other clinicians. I do my best to bring that technical piece into it and translate it in a way that a physician leader can appreciate or a nurse can appreciate. So I'm not there, hitting them with all the jargon, so to speak, but I can still with so many years of knowledge now around medical practices, I can translate doing a Kaizen in a way that, makes folks, reduces that anxiety, that overwhelm when you start giving them a lot of the jargon. The flip side of the question too, just to make sure I don't lose that, when these methods start touching physicians and nurses and other clinical partners and healthcare administrators, really what we need from them is leadership. First and foremost, a lot of these improvement methodologies are really built around some very cultural improvement habits and behaviors. And then they're also built around leadership. And so that's the number one thing. If you're a physician and you get pulled on a project with me, I'm looking for your influence. I'm looking for your subject matter expertise to that problem that we're trying to solve, whatever it may be. And then I'm looking for your leadership to help push us. I'll guide you with the technical. I need you to guide us with the leadership aspects.
Jarvis, let me ask you a question. I know from having worked in a large healthcare system that sometimes metrics are thrust upon providers, physicians, mid-levels, if you will. Different departments, it could be the ED that I'm very familiar with or more familiar with. And you will hear, depending on the provider perspective, physician perspective, whether it's fair or just, and it's not infrequent that you see a difference of opinion between hospital administration, corporate, think, if you will, and what's really going on in the department itself. How do you sort of navigate those waters when you've got a group of physicians that have their perspective of how something should be done or the level it's currently running at, and there's kind of a disconnect between how things are running and what other people's expectations are? How do you navigate those waters?
Yeah, so some of my response is kind of it depends on that unique situation, but from a very high level kind of conceptual approach, that's where my background in project management starts to save my butt quite a bit. Because when you go through training for Lean or Six Sigma, they don't always touch on how to manage the people, how to manage the project aspects, how to manage the change management components. And that's where that additional skills and background have really come into play for me. So it's meeting with let me say first identifying key stakeholders, meeting with them to understand what their skin in the game may be. So if it's a physician, you're really understanding what he or she may care about, but then what their entire group of physicians, their peers and colleagues may also care about. So when we start changing things, changing processes, bringing in new services, data, new equipment, whatever the case may be, when we start reviewing the data, we know how to communicate it in a way, again, that they can consume and digest. So it's not pushback, but it's, more understanding. Interesting thing in my work that I've done with so many physicians over the years now, physicians get it a lot of times when you present them with data. So the Lean Six Sigma process, for example, it's 5 key phases. It's define, measure, analyze, improve, control. And I'm not clinical, obviously, but I've tried over the years to connect that with the physician practice. So when a patient comes through the ER, to your example, they go through a define phase. They go through triage first, right? That's where the nurse or the physicians may get that first look at the patient to quickly assess and to try to figure out why that person's in their department. Then they start to measure. So they're taking labs, they're sending them to radiology for some diagnostic testing. So that's kind of that measure. Analyzes where they're really digging down to the root cause of why that patient is there. And then they want to improve. They're going to prescribe them medications or whatever the treatment plan is. And then they're controlling, right? And that's kind of to the point of discharge and any follow-ups that's needed after their hospital stay. So the 5 phases of DMAIC for Lean, for Six Sigma specifically, but for Lean Six Sigma world, almost kind of follows the same practices that, clinicians go through to take care of patients. So that's the way that I kind of approach it to kind of get them to appreciate what we're about to go through for that real improvement project we're going to work on.
So for people who aren't really familiar with specific tools within Lean Six Sigma for physicians, what do you think the most important ones are and why?
So the most important tool that I'll give to any healthcare professional, but definitely for physicians who get pulled into a project, if you're working with me, be prepared, is a process map. And so process map is one of those just absolute fundamental tools of quality and process improvement. It is the old school analogy that I probably need to update at some point is, when you jump in your car and you want to go from one side of town to the other, you pull out a map and it's going to show you visually how you get there, navigating the roads. That's what a process map is going to do on our projects. But even if you're not doing an improvement project, if you're the ER doctor and you're trying to figure out how your department works, put it on a process map. If you are the inpatient physician and you're trying to figure out how do we discharge patients, put it on a process map. So the answer is like almost always put it on a process map, because then you can visually see exactly what is going on, all the steps involved, all the key players and departments and things that are involved to impact change, or to at least get your head wrapped around whatever that operation or that process is.
Jarvis, when you just use that metaphor and you saw Jack smiling in the screen there, you know what he was really thinking. I'm just going to let you know. He was thinking, no, Fred uses the map to drive around. I use my phone and I use electronic navigation. So
yeah, that's what I said. I have to really update that analogy. I've been holding on to that for a while now.
I remembered my mom teaching me how to use a map when I was very young. It triggered one of those warm memories that sometimes come out of nowhere.
Yeah, I have a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old, and they probably will never touch a map in their life. That's the interesting thing, right? Yeah. So yeah, I'll figure out how to revamp that analogy. But you guys got it. That's the important thing.
Let me ask you, Jarvis, have you worked much in the clinic space, outside the hospital as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so can you share with us, the audience, and us here that the sort of most common things that you see, if you were to kind of baseline some common issues that you see in a clinic, and maybe some changes that you're able to make or suggest that actually create a significant uptick in improvement?
Yeah, in my experience of working with clinics, first and foremost, you're going to find access issues. So how long is it taking me to book an appointment and to get in into that doctor's office, whatever it may be? In my time working in clinics, interestingly enough, I was bouncing around to a few different clinics at one time. and I think it was one day I went to 3 different clinics to review some of their throughput. So throughput is essentially how do we get patients from the time they walk through the door to the time they leave? What are the process flows that connects to get them out as efficiently, as quickly as possible, as safely as possible as well. But I went to 3 different clinics and heard the same complaint from 3 different patients, which was all around scheduling and the fact that their appointments have been, their appointment times have been botched essentially. For a patient, it's horrible because they're taking time off of work, have to juggle life and kids to make sure they get to their appointments on time. And right there, that was a recommendation to the leadership team that I was partnering with to say, let's really dig in on this. And so that is number 2. So first is access and appointment scheduling. The second is throughput. Once the patients show up to our facilities, if it's an outpatient clinic, to screw up on their schedules and it's on our end, that's kind of one of those no-no events. So how do we remedy that? How do we find flexibility in our schedule to work them in? And ultimately, the third biggest thing is then patient satisfaction, patient experience. How do we let the patients know we're doing everything to provide them with service once they've committed, part of their day to coming in for a visit? We owe them that much. So that's the responsibility and respect that the organizations take on. Those are the things that I see, I guess, the top big 3 issues from an outpatient clinic point of view. And physicians, again, I think are right there in the core of all those opportunities. How are they flexing with their physician teams to, meet with all their their patients that might be within their entire roster? How are they moving things around or making themselves available to the patients once they show up, and things happen from time to time? Can they still accommodate and get those patients in? So
wait a minute. Are you telling me not every patient shows up that's supposed to show up?
Yeah, I know, right? Hey, even if they show up, 10, 15, 20 minutes late, there's still that expectation. So it's a unique time to be in healthcare. I think the expectations are totally changing, and how do we build processes to still accommodate? So it's an interesting time.
So I'm going to beat Jack on the next question because I'm sure he's already got 3 in mind because he's a faster thinker than me.
Allegedly.
I'm curious, in your experience, Jarvis, what percentage of the physicians that you meet with initially do you feel are completely on board with the fact that and an outsider, if you will, when I say outsider, might even be a company you're employed with, but a professional with your skills shows up? What percentage are like wide open, glad to see you? What percentage you just know there's pushback and it's going to be a long road?
Yeah, well, luckily I'm a pretty big guy, so I think I just scare them all into, I just flex a couple of months. No, it's interesting now. That's a really good question, because when I first got into the industry, and of course, this was me having to accommodate to healthcare because I came from outside into the healthcare industry. I think everybody was taking off running. I think I truly scared them because I was the guy saying, hey, process maps, data, just chasing behind everyone. So everybody ran from me at the very beginning, and even some of my nursing partners at that time gave me a lot of grief. I remember a comment my first year from a nurse leader was like, "Why do we need you? This isn't a manufacturing plant. You're an engineer. You're not welcome here. Seats taken for us." To about a year and a half ago, I was working with a group and I got the same feedback. So that's still prevalent, but I think on the physician side nowadays, my approach, I've gotten a lot smarter in my approach. And so instead of, chasing behind them and trying to scare them with the improvement work and all, again, the jargon and a lot of the things that quality people, process improvement people come with, I walk up, I introduce myself, and now it's, hey, Doc, tell me about yourself. Like, I'm really on the front end, trying to just learn them more, develop the relationships first. So it's not as bad nowadays. Nowadays, I think physician leaders are more willing to sit back and listen and really learn more. I also turn the conversation around more into what process improvement can do for them. So recent conversations with physician leaders is, hey, doc, what if we got you out of here on time? What if we helped you get more patients in your clinic? What if we helped reduce the time for that revenue cycle so you could get paid faster? Those are things that kind of strike home personally. Now you're talking about my time, you're talking about the money in my bank, so those are all the reasons why physician leaders should be a part of this, on top of the fact that reimbursement dollars are also tied to overall quality performance. So, hey, doc, what if we reduced your infection rates? What if we help get your satisfaction scores exactly where you want them, whatever that target is? So
it's a good approach.
Oh,
well, that sounds a lot better. I thought I had to turn into like a salesperson for a while. I was like, let me sell quality to you. So
it doesn't matter what sector we work in our lives, Jarvis. It's everybody wants to be heard and known and feel like there's a genuine connection. And that's what, to me, you just said with what's in it for them, which is absolutely critical. So that's not specific necessarily to healthcare, but clearly in the healthcare space, it changes the dynamic from here's the guy coming in to beat us down with the whole process. I came into medicine to treat patients. Why are they asking me to do X, Y, Z? My days are hard and long enough. And now I've got to meet with this guy and push back. And the way you framed it is a great way for sure.
Well, and I still, keep a focus on results first and foremost. When I officially get tagged with a project or I get brought in to help support projects, I let the teams know we're here to do a job. We're going to push and kind of see the mission through. We're either going to succeed or we're going to learn a lot of stuff in the process. So I don't cut back on, the goals from that point of view, but I let them know we're going to do it in a way that I'm not trying to scare them because I can't do it without them. So, yeah, Fred, I appreciate kind of how you summarized it. That's the goal. But at the end of the day, too, it's still about the improvement. Again, it's a unique balance. I've smart enough to kind of approach it differently as I've grown up in healthcare now. But when I first started, I was like a Tasmanian devil with process improvement. Like, you're going to do these projects.
How do your kids feel about that sort of parenting, Jarvis?
Oh, they love it. They're about to say they are 100%. And I just put them down. So if you see one of them walk up behind me, it's because they are 100% energy.
So I have a bit of a confession. In a professional situation, I dealt with someone who really liked clipboards and process improvement, and I was not the best, most receptive person to it. And the worst thing they said to me was, "No, look, you can learn it, and then you can prove that it works with its own system. That's your first final project." I'm like, "No, that's insane." So it actually took me seeing the results, and then because I'm very visual, so actually when I saw a process map done out, and then where you could actually kind of see the centers of gravity in a department move around and like who actually needs to approve what to get what done, then it clicked. And I then started listening to the process people.
Well, and I am about as critical. So I love my quality people. And
I do too now, but I was a convert.
Yeah, but no, trust me, I love them and I critique them at the same time. So those are some of the things that even got me to launch the podcast that you mentioned earlier as well, because we have an approach. And keep in mind, I mean, I'm going to completely like stereotype my quality people, but we're engineers, we are data analysts. So, stereotypically we're introverted, and, once you've assigned us with something, we're going to complete it. And we don't always understand why you're not on board. Come on, Jack, what's going on? So those are some of the things that I coach, my colleagues around is, hey, let's try a different approach. Let's sit back and get to know the people first before we start throwing all, Kaizen events.
Yeah.
That scares people a lot.
It does. It's legitimately jargon. You kind of feel like a fish out of water. But I think where the real change is when people actually realize, okay, wait a minute, what they're saying is working. Like we can measure these things. It's working. So let's figure out what it is. And I think that there was a shift, or that there is a shift kind of going on right now where people kind of just accept it and aren't trying to run away from it so much anymore because they know you can't kind of run from it now.
Yeah, I had a physician leader that we went through our Lean Six Sigma training, our black belt training at the same exact time. So we both played football in college. So, I mean, we were just kind of clicking on every cylinder. So we were really good friends. And I remember calling him up one day. We were just sharing our frustrations back and forth. And I told him how frustrated I was with the group that I was working with. And he asked me why, and I explained, I'm trying to get the project done. I don't know why aren't they following me? And as I explained the situation, he actually said, he was like, Jarvis, you're right. Everything you're saying is right. And then he was like, but is it worth being right if nobody's on the project with you? And so that was, again, one of those, words of wisdom from a physician leader on how to get projects done better. And I've carried that with me in my approach as well. It's like, okay, let me sit back and think about my approach. So, it's a balance on both sides. Quality professionals, I think we still have to, apply the technical approach and the tactful approach, and then convincing clinical leaders, physician leaders to follow us. The groups that I really enjoy working with are the young physicians that are, coming out of their GME programs and getting placed in hospitals nowadays. They are awesome to work with because they have experience from doing a lot of research and things with their GME programs, and it usually translates into PI projects really easily. So I'm actually looking for a couple of physicians leaders on a project that I'm working with the group now. And we intentionally said, hey, let's kind of shake up the GME program first. So
very cool.
One thing that if I pull it outside of more of a human behavioral scope, I think that some people struggle with change and get very insecure with change. And I think it's inherent in human nature. Personally, some people deal with it better, but I think sometimes until a pain point is either outweighs the fear of the change, or you can get buy-in to your point and how you engage with people first, Jarvis, where people understand what's in it for them, it can be a real tug of war because change is not easy. And sometimes I'm not referring, it can be little change or big change, but change can make folks very insecure. So I think it's across the board, but you come marching in with your toolbox, and I could see why there's some pushback potentially.
But one thing that I can't stand being an early adopter is when I know that there's technology out there that solves problems or makes it easier to work together. Like this, it's what time is it even? It's 9:26, and it's like, it doesn't matter where we are. We're having an actual conversation discussing really important ideas that affect people, and we're doing it completely digitally. And this is the way the world is moving. And a lot of industries, because everyone hates change, period, are holding on as long as they can. And it's really going to take people like you, like me, to come in and say, no, you're doing it wrong. There's a better way to do this that makes everyone happier.
In my Lean Six Sigma world, we call those cave people. And it stands for Citizens Against Virtually Everything. So,
yes. I am writing that down.
So, as am I. Do we need is this like copyrighted? We need to send you money every time we use this?
So I will take anything you're sending. But, no, I know for sure I stole it from a past colleague, and I've held on to it as well. I was like, cave people. Yep. But, I'm working with a group here in Atlanta and just trying to get them to use Microsoft Teams.
Oh my God. So I love Teams. I have
thank you, right?
Because the common data service on the back end of Microsoft, I'm in total love with. And it's like I'm pulling teeth. They're like, but why? And they text me and email me. Like, I try to explain to them, you're making your life harder because I have to go outside my normal process.
Right. Instead of buying into a new process.
Yeah, I got an email reply from one of the guys on the project today, and it's like, Jarvis, can you forward me all of the presentations and some of the the data we started collecting? And I just sent him the Teams link, and he replied back. He was like, "What's this?" And I was like, "Yeah, here's a YouTube video for Microsoft Teams." So Teams is it. That's life.
Yeah, it's interesting that the more technology evolves, the more collaborative that people are naturally becoming. And there, I'm sure you can see the same wave I do of just a massive new scale of collaboration. And that's going to require people like you to make sure, honestly, once you really can grasp how much data is actually out there and how many moving pieces are going at once, that's when things like Lean Six Sigma become absolutely integral. And that's why I'm a big fan. I'm not a quality guy personally. It's just not my personality, but I'm great friends with many. And I'm like, just tell me what to do. I listen now.
Yeah. Well, that's on my podcast show. I have a question that I ask the guests that come on, and it is, what are some of the future trends that healthcare leaders are excited about? And most all of them say things related to AI and machine thinking, machine learning, and all these technological things. And then I almost always follow up with, what are the skills that healthcare leaders will need to start to learn?
Nice.
To manage that, because we just said, healthcare folks, we're the slowest industry to adopt traditionally, and a lot of us are cave people. Like, we don't want the change, and yet so many leaders are looking forward to the change. So I was like, okay, what is it really going to take to adopt this? How do we build in the quality to make sure we're not, creating more holes in the Swiss cheese and cause, care issues and all these other, bad stuff that happens in healthcare. So it's an interesting focus that people they love the mindset about the future, and they fight it at the same time. So it's a weird world.
So Jarvis, let me ask you a question, if I could. What would be one or two key takeaways that you could give especially a physician audience, if you will, based on your skills and your expertise?
Based on my skills and expertise, I'd say the first one, and I kind of touched on it a little earlier in our conversation, but don't be afraid to lead. That's first and foremost. I had a physician leader recently share with me, he has a focus around fearless leadership and relentless leadership. He's unapologetically a leader. And I think that's the first part that any physician, no matter your level, if you're coming in brand new to a facility, or if you've already been at the facility for decades, just the power, the passion to get up in front of your colleagues and to stand up to support your other disciplines and colleagues that are helping you provide great patient care, to help remove barriers to them getting the job done, or help them provide resources to get the things they need. That's number one. And leadership, again, is the core of any Lean Six Sigma or quality improvement function. Number two is go out and get training. I've had so many leaders that I've partnered with when I did my personal and professional development around quality improvement and Lean Six Sigma. I've done a number of training programs, whether I'm teaching at Emory around Lean Six Sigma or doing things through my business to teach professionals. But I've taught so many physician leaders, and they tend to be some of the best leaders coming out of professional development training programs like Lean Six Sigma, project management, data analytics. But these are things that these are skills that physician leaders need to have nowadays.
So you I assume, do training yourself, meaning you train others in the skills needed for Six Sigma, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Train and coach. So my approach is I do a number of either in-person or virtual kind of blended learning training modules. They can be done publicly in a wide open public space, or they can be done privately within any organization. Come and do some very personal workshops with groups. And I'm building out now some private communities. So once participants, students go through a training program with me, they'll have access to the big community of everybody else who's also going through training experiences. Because the fact is, when you get trained, it's like anything, right? You learn a new set of skills, and if you don't use them, you lose them. So being able to provide a community so you can ask questions, you have access to me as the quality coach. That's kind of the root of the name of my company, the Quality Coaching Company, because we're going to coach you on applying quality improvement skills. We're going to coach you on getting the results, that you want within your organization and your practice.
So Jack, how are we going to make sure folks know how to get a hold of Jarvis if they're interested in learning more about what his
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to put all of your contact information in the descriptions, and I'll put it on the screen as well.
Great. So Jarvis, real quick, well, doesn't have to be real quick, but so tell me what a leader looks like, if you will. It's easy, and I'm going to suspect that it could be some interpretation depending on one's perspective. But it's easy to say be a leader. But if you were to narrow it down into a thumbnail, what does that mean to be a leader? I mean, just because somebody went to school and has incredible intelligence and great training and a degree and all of that doesn't necessarily mean they're a leader. They may be very self-inflated and full of themselves and think they're leaders, but that doesn't necessarily mean they actually have leadership. They're really implementing leadership skills. So what does that look like to you?
Yeah, so I'll try not to get too cliche on this, but it's two things. The first is speaking up. So you see an injustice or you see an opportunity for improvement. The first part of leadership, again, no matter what level you are, whether you're senior, official, formal senior leader, or if you're just one of the guys, taking care of the front line, I think it is speaking up, standing up for your team, and letting things bringing things to light. Ultimately, the second is leaning in, not running from the change that people like me are going to be pushing on you. Hopefully, collaborating more so than push, but leaning in, learning more, asking questions. I think, to me, the best leaders in the world are the ones asking just a ridiculous amount of questions that get to really good answers. So being thoughtful is formal leadership. I think is it's going to be passe. I think hopefully in the coming years. I think real leaders. You said the word earlier, Fred. It's going to be influencers. People who are really engaging to solve problems, to provide the best care possible. That's really what some of the best leaders I've encountered. They only care about the patient. A trick that I use when I work with teams nowadays, but I learned it from some really good healthcare leaders, is I keep a picture of my grandmother in my wallet. And so when I'm working on an improvement project, I'll put the picture of my grandmother up on the board. And when we start coming up with ideas, it's so easy for the physicians to only want to take care of the physician needs. The nurses, want to take care of their respective needs. And I always point back to my grandmother and say, we're here to take care of her needs first. So that's what a leader is going to bring in. They're going to keep the team focused on the right things and not their own, internal needs or desires for a particular project.
So to honor the late Kobe Bryant, I'm going to suggest that we call it being a Mamba leader. And we've got the Mamba coach on here who can teach folks how to be Mamba leaders.
We can absolutely do it. And, I'm a sports guy by background, so I always bring sports analogies to all my teams, but we are always pushing for the championship. That's the standard in healthcare today. If you're not pushing for a championship within your respective teams, we should be having a different conversation.
So can I throw another sports cliche out there for a minute and see what
you
have
never
to say? Right? Never too many sports cliches. So the metaphor I like to use, guys, when it comes to learning something or being adept at something, whatever that something is, I find that there are innate capacities people have that they are able to do something. And I see very smart people that try at certain things, and they just don't seem to be able to put the pieces together. So whether it's innate and I've not been able to quantify in all my 62 years exactly sometimes what that granularity is. What is the difference between this person and that person, where one can learn certain things and the other does not? So my question is, the sports metaphor is, I don't know that you can teach speed. So there are those. So what's an awesome 40-yard dash? 4.25?
Yeah, 4.2, 4.3.
I mean, that would be right. So for the guy that's a 4.5 and they go to one of these training camps and maybe they get better muscle twitch. I mean, you would know best. They can shave how much off there? If they're a 4.5, what's the best they're going to be?
Yeah, if they're lucky, they're going to get down to about a 4.4, maybe a 4.3. But They probably only got one really good 4-3 spread at them.
Right. So what do you do with those people that, don't run fast, and they struggle a little bit with certain concepts that other people you work with, and see, embrace, and get it. And I don't mean attitude. I don't mean pushback, but they struggle with the concepts of what you're trying to implement.
Yeah. So, one of those core philosophies around Lean and Six Sigma quality improvement that I hadn't touched on, that I hope all of my quality people call me out on, is continuous improvement. So at the end of the day, everything is about Kaizen, continuously improving every single day, just one step further. And so with your people who may not get it the first 5 times that they go through training or they work on a project, but if they show that they're coachable, right? Sports, that's exactly what sports is all about. That's why there's a coach on every team, because they're getting that team a little bit better every week, every game, every practice, just a little bit better. The goal is to pursue perfection. Rarely do we ever really achieve it, but that is the goal. I think as long as a person's coachable, that's a key thing. And I'll say that even for myself. I mean, I've been doing this in the healthcare industry specifically for 13 plus years now, and I have a coach. And so when the coach has a coach, that says something. And so I think all healthcare leaders at every level, if you can get a coach, a mentor. I've had some colleagues recently tell me that they kind of look at it like their round table of peers and friends that they can lean on to provide them with advice to keep moving forward. That's what you want at the end of the day. Continuous improvement is really the core of what we're trying to do operationally as a business, with Lean Six Sigma as physician leaders. Even they have to continuously improve their doctoring skills, their medicine skills, and so forth. So that's really it.
I have to make one editing correction for you, if that's okay.
Sure.
You said there's no such thing as perfection. I'm just going to throw in 17-0, and I'm guessing you know what I'm referring to, Jarvis.
Absolutely. Now, for a second, I thought you were going to say Jack's beard, man. I've been working on a beard for the longest, and this is like my little goatee for the last couple of weeks now. And I'm like, man, how can I get a beard like that?
The funny part, so I only recently went to like a pro barber because I can only ever get it so long. And I'm like, I normally, it breaks here. What am I doing wrong? And he's like, you have the most, I've never seen a chin that, oh my God. And like, it took him an hour to actually straighten everything out. And I'm like, I'm so glad that was hard for you, because I felt like I was failing for like a decade.
Yeah, no, trust me, that thing is straight out of like 300 Leonidas beards. So
yeah,
sorry.
I mean,
that's where my perfection joke was going, Fred.
Let's just say Harden's got nothing on you, Jack. If you don't know who Harden is, I'll tell you later.
I do not.
It's okay.
Oh, wait, isn't that the player?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. James Harden. Yes, the beard. Yeah. They call him the beard. Yes.
Okay.
Rockets. Yes. Sorry. So what else would you guys like to talk about that would be helpful for our audience? Anything? Are we missing anything? Are we leaving anything on the table, Jack? Anything come to your mind, or Jarvis?
So I know you mentioned you had a podcast. And you have guests. What kind of guests do you have on your podcast that you're a guest on kind of our cast?
Sure. So the Healthcare Quality Cast is, so far, it's been a range of leaders across the board. When I kicked off, it was definitely me inviting other me's on, so other healthcare quality process improvement professionals. But I had kind of the aha moment after a couple of episodes, like really quality is every healthcare leader's job. So right now I have an amazing range of healthcare leaders, from doctors, nurses. I've even found some non-healthcare folks to come on and kind of talk about what process improvement looks like in their industry, and then I connect the healthcare dots. I'll brag about the show if it's okay.
No, please. No. Good. Yeah, I was inviting you to do that.
Well, for your viewers, the physician leaders that I've had on have been incredibly impressive. But the show that's going to come out next week, sorry, just looking at my calendar here, on February the 4th, is a physician leader, Dr. Richard Zane. He's chief of emergency medicine out at UC Health in Denver, Colorado, and he's also the director of their Center of Innovation. And so the interview is really interesting. He is a physician leader that is, he was the one that made the statements about just being unapologetically, being an unapologetic leader. And so, I would invite any of the folks that plug in with your cast, check out leaders like that. I mean, physician leaders, when I say they're stepping up in this world, with respect to quality, innovation, and so forth. I'm meeting some leaders across the board that are just doing some just scary, impressive stuff. I've got an AI expert coming on. I've talked with some folks over in Australia, some folks over in the Middle East, a physician leader down in Mexico who's leading the entire quality movement for Mexico, for the entire country. So physicians, like I said, when we're talking leadership, we're talking big picture stuff that will make you very popular very fast.
Yeah. So we'll also put the link to the episode with who we mentioned, the CU. You said director of emergency medicine.
Yeah, well, he's chief of that.
Chief. So we'll put that episode of his in our description as well, because that sounds interesting. That good people on leadership are hard to find because being a leader is hard. I totally agree that speaking up is step one of leadership, and I think it's a lesson that you sometimes have to learn. So finding people that are unapologetically leaders are even rarer, and that's something I want to listen to as well.
Yeah, he's very impressive. I can't think of enough. A lot of the guests on my show, I cyber stalk through LinkedIn half the time.
That's what everyone does.
And so he was just cool enough to come on. But yeah, that's been the experience. I honestly tell folks, I think I'm the biggest fan of my own podcast. I'm the worst part of my own podcast. Like half the time, I'm like, I wish I could cut me out and just listen to the guests. So,
well, I think that's pretty much it. Y'all, what are you thinking?
I'm good.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us on our first episode. We hope to feature experts across as many subjects as we can. So if you're working to change healthcare for the better, please use the form in the description below to reach out. We'd love to hear from you. And have an excellent rest of your day.